the opposite party's basket and tell them it's all yours. So the very first important thing that I really talk about is the time. Whenever you receive a pushback or whenever you receive any kind of comment on your agreement from the opposite party, you are going to be very, very careful about the time. You're going to acknowledge the given email and also come back with a pre-decided decision as to within what time you will come and communicate to them. The time frame can be any time between 7 days to 10 days or within 48 to 72 hours at the earliest. Now, why? What is the basic psychology to do that? Any human being would love to have a very stable timeline set for their workforce. Why? Because it gives them a very clear indicator of work which they have to take up to in the remaining future. And in case they really have to come back to us with any kind of future information, they'll be ready within that time. I mean, there are a lot of circumstances when the suppliers, the opposite parties aren't really very sure about what time they should be reverting back after we reverted back to them. But it is very, very important for us to acknowledge the email, mention the time frame within which you will reply to them, and make sure you adhere to this timeline. Always keep a leverage of 48 hours in case you're unable to do it in case of any circumstances. In a very layman's term, over-promise, under-promise, and over-perform. 1. Second is to always make sure that whatever negotiations or fallbacks that you receive from any kind of those clients or any kind of those suppliers, you are always going to be very, very accurate about your underlying issues that you have with the opposite party. In a lot of circumstances, the opposite party just comes back to you and says that, listen, we can't agree to this. You might want to dig out a little further and ask them, why can't you do this? A lot of opposite parties might be very, very scared about it. Okay, might not be really happy dealing with the same. When they come and tell you that, no, we can't agree and we can't even tell you why are we doing with this. But it is up to you to encourage them. And I quote, you have to write them stating that until unless you do not help us come with a middle background, or until unless you do not help us with anything that can come up with a middle ground, it will not help us close this contract at the earliest mode. And we request you to help us establish this agreement at the earliest. You can use these quotations. You can really sit down and request them and come up with their underlying issues, because if you're very, very sure about the contracts and the clauses and your set of principles, remember, go back to point number 3 when I said the homework which you have to do before you deal with the negotiation, which means draw a proper line of the requirements that your client wants before you go through an agreement. So the second point is to encourage them to just open up and talk to them about their underlying issues. A blanket ban no is a happy news. I repeat, a blanket ban no is a happy news, because a lot of negotiators will come and tell you that a blanket ban no is like a deadlock. It's not. It's not. You are digging into the underlying issue. You will come and tell them, listen, this is how we can deal with it. Why don't you come and tell me about your set of problems so that we can sit down and encourage and make sure that this contract comes to its right pace? How are we not going to deal with it? Put the ball in their court. Tell them that we are eager to work with you. And until unless we are not very eager to work with you, we will not really come back to you with a lot of negotiations. So this was my second point. Third point is to make sure that you do not open all your cards at the first round of negotiation. The rounds of negotiation can depend if they are either a big ticket negotiations or a small ticket negotiations, or big ticket contracts or a small ticket contracts. So if there are small ticket contracts, the round of negotiations might be precisely on the amount or precisely on the damage. Of course, there is no statement line into what kind of areas with which they will sit down and circle it. But it is very, very important that all of you understand that there might be a lot of mutual negotiations into very tiny and minute details. As compared to large ticket contracts, they might more or less look into the damages, more or less look into the liquidity, more or less look into the indemnity. I repeat, these are not blanket ban, blanket ban rules and regulations which you need to follow. Probably you can signify and then figure it out what are big ticket contracts and what are small ticket contracts. That's not how we deal with it. So in case these are big ticket contracts, you will never open up your cards at the first go. do not mention everything that you want as an underlying issue with the opposite party. Now, why do I say that? Because you will always have a second round of negotiation if they do not agree to this. If they agree to this, you obviously have a brownie point. But if they do not agree to it, you know you have to open up your cards at the second round of negotiation. There is always something you can keep back with you with a forte that probably you can help us with the third round of negotiation, maybe fourth round of negotiation. I am not saying to hide your issues. All what I'm really trying to say is that put your issues in minimal words and try and help them understand if they can go for it. Fourth, I think you have to be very, very kind with your communication. Avoid writing long paragraphs, avoid writing essays in your comments. I have seen lawyers sitting down and explaining the meaning of indemnity, the liability, and their sections and their particular case laws as well. I am not interested in understanding what kind of case laws or what kind of sections do come along with. I am very, very interested in helping you understand how can you negotiate, help me find this contract better. So keep your words minimal, extremely minimal. Yes, Arun, that's very rightly said. So keep your timeline very, very minimal, but be very, very precise to what you are exactly looking out for in that contract. Once you understand what is their gauged out problem, you will then be able to understand how good you can take it ahead. Fourth, be extremely humble when they really come up to you with their set of issues. And be smart enough to understand where you can stop with your profit, understanding the underlying issues of your client. Now, what do I mean by this statement? It means that, let's just say, for example, a client comes to you with a certain contract and tells you that, I really wanted to help you negotiate this to the opposite party. They've been constantly bickering back and forth, and I'm just unable to understand how far do I take it ahead. Can you help me understand this? Okay, I sign up for this. I go ahead, I talk to the opposite party. We have all the 3 rules as I've mentioned earlier. Now, fourth, I am sitting down and talking to them about certain things which I believe might not be in my client's favor. Really might not be in my client's favor at the given moment. But I have an anticipation that probably if the situation changes, or if the situation does not works in my client's favor, how well am I supposed to negotiate, or how well do I really put up my terms and conditions to a consideration that probably the clause that you're asking for, probably the situation that you're really talking to us at the given moment is not very beneficial to us at the given time, but probably in the future it might be very, very beneficial. Know where to stop. As a lawyer, this can be a very good job for you. You will have to understand where to stop, because once you understand that your client gives you a red signal that, listen, email, we are done here, I think I'm good to go. That stays between you and your client. But to the opposite party, it's well negotiated. You get the trick here, right? Fifth and the final point, which I think is not something that all of you are really facing or gauging this as a part of an issue, but I think it's very, very important to play psychologically. So when you really receive a contract, which is, you could say, which is something which is beyond our understanding, or you do not understand that what is the problem over here, what is the underlying issue which is standing to the opposite party, and I can't really make it out, even after explaining it. So, okay, let's just take this in the form of an entire example. You receive a contract from an opposite party with a blanket ban no. Now, with my second rule, you go and push back the supplier and you tell them that, hey, listen, why did you tell me about what are the issues that you're facing? How about we come to a middle ground? 3, he comes back to you saying that, listen, I don't want to come to a middle ground. This is a blanket ban. 4th, I go back to him and tell him that irrespective of the fact this is a blanket ban, I want you to help me understand how far can we go with this? How far can we go with this contract in case the situation changes? So you have to make them understand the anticipation of the situations which might change. So the situation might be extremely good or might be in favor, but might not be in favor if the situation changes. Like the lockdown series, it has really tested a lot of contracts at the give and go, right? So you have to have a lot of anticipation while you are negotiating your contract with the opposite party, because it's just very, very important to help your client, not only the given situation, but in the opposite situation. Mark this statement, which you can really use this in the form of your client. You can really ask these questions to your clients when they come back to you with certain set of principles, like I mentioned earlier, activities to be conducted before negotiating a contract, certain principles which could be taken into consideration.